It seems that historically, at least in recent history, we Indians are not very good in building organizations.
Very
but
good.
As a good, I like to think I'm a good Hindu and good Indian, it kind of hurts me that we are not very well united. So I want to get your opinion on why we are not very well organized and united. What should we do? Because like this kind of conversation, I would expect thousands of people here.
Yes, that's because I'm not Shah Rukh Khan.
But I mean, this is so deep and so powerful, this world-changing philosophy and brings us to be united. So first of all, why we are not united? Second thing, my concern is whenever I go to temples and stuff, I see that I'm on the younger side of population. I'm concerned that our younger generation, they are not as many participants as they should be, because this is deep and simple stuff. And what can we do in terms of education and like organizing this in part of academia and education, as opposed to all the responsibility going to parents and one-on-one we give and still stay divided. So sort of building an education society kind of thing, and so that the younger generation gets this, that rather than losing it.
I think these are history of it. The church positioned itself as the intermediary between man and God, like the broker. Like we have a franchise to distribute what God is marketing, given us the franchise, exclusive franchise. So we have the agency to distribute God. And this means you have to come through us. So this idea that church has the power, exclusive power, for all religious matters, gave it the money, the clout, taxation, all of that, to create a very powerful institution. So for thousands of years, they had the advantage of having that exclusive monopoly over the lives of people, and so they built a very powerful institution. Now all Western institutions are modeled after the church. You may not realize that. Before the British East India Company, when they studied multinational corporate history, they like to talk about British East India Company as a role model for multinationals today, that they all followed the articles of incorporation and bylaws and shareholders and board meetings and resolutions, and how you govern a multinational. British East India Company perfected it. But before the British East India Company, there were people like the Knights Templar, which was medieval era multinational run by the Vatican. Vatican had its own multinationals. They perfected the idea of multinational. They were into various businesses all over. So British East India Company also derived a lot of its models from that. And the institutional mechanisms of the church start with the Romans. It's not Jesus. Jesus is not an institution builder. And it is not people in Jerusalem. It is when the Romans in the 4th century, they take over Christianity and Romanize it. And that's when the New Testament is born, and that's when Christianity is born, the church is born as an instrument of the emperor's ruling strategy, ruling authority, ruling style. So the institutional experience of the West is very deep. And it's not that Western religions are institutionalized, it is that Western religions created institution concept. And corporate institutions, business institutions came later. Government institutions are a spin-off from the time when the Holy Roman Empire was the church and the government all combined in one. So the origin of institutions, including government institutions, including corporate institutions, all linked with the church, all common origin. So you must understand that we didn't have that. We didn't have a very centralized, authoritative, exclusive institution that runs your life. Even the king, the Kshatriya king, did not have the authority to determine your dharma. It says, many times it says in our traditions, that the king must let everybody have their own dharma. It says very clearly that everybody can have his own dharma. There is no state dharma. Ashoka had Buddhism as his state dharma, but Hindu Rajas allowed every community to have its own dharma. So there is a separation of Brahmin and Kshatriya, very old in Indian system, which is now called separation of church and state. as if it's a Western idea. But the separation of Brahmin representing the spiritual life and Kshatriya representing the state is equivalent idea, and it's a very old idea, and that is why the Varnas are separate. A Brahmin cannot be the Kshatriya. If a Brahmin were to take over the Raja job, he has to stop being the Brahmin. He has to resign from being the Brahmin. He cannot have both the jobs at the same time. Conflict of interest. This is a very interesting point. So our model, which is explained in chapter 4 of this book, I talk about, chapter 4 is called Order and Chaos. I talk about how the Dharma model is a very decentralized model. So every jati is ruling on its own, every village is ruling on its own. There is very limited authority from a central source. So the central emperor had on some matters he'll intervene and run your life. But on a lot of matters, the local guy is running their own life, doing whatever. This is why India is so hospitable to anybody coming in, settling down, so easy to invade. The weakness it causes is fragmentation. It means that since there is no one solid guy running the show, the advantage is that there is nobody denying you your rights, and you can be very creative, and Indians are very good in decentralized small groups. Very difficult to organize a large group of Indians and make them operate, and you have to use Western models. So that's why people like Infosys and all that use Western management style, because Indians left to themselves, everybody will improvise. You tell you want 1 million copies of pants or shirt, and you have a large number of tailors, they all improvise, somebody will put buttons this way, that way, everybody is very creative. The raga is played differently, the chef is making creative improvisation, artists doing a little separate thing. Indians are very creative for that reason. But if you want mass-produced, standardized, organized control, then this same creativity also becomes a handicap. So the Western culture excelled in something and we excelled in something else. The Western culture excelled in collective, systemic, organized, orderly, top-down control. And we specialized in everybody can think for himself, everybody's individualistic and improvise. That's why when I used to be in business, I used to have meetings sometimes with Indians and Westerners sitting around talking about some software project or something, and Indians all talking to each other simultaneously. So 1 is talking to 2, and 3 is talking to 5, and 6 is talking to 1 and 2, and 3 is listening to 2 and talking to 4, like that. And the Westerners would be so dumbfounded and so shocked, they would just sit quietly and just keep listening like that, not knowing what's going on. Yes. So then the meeting would be over, and then one white guy would come to me and say, Rajiv, I did not know what happened. I don't know what is going on. I have no idea what's going on. And the Indians very relaxed about it, because everybody figured out, filtered out, connected this, that, filled in some gap, improvised, gone to his office and knows what to do. Yeah? This is very true for those of you who've been in international teams. And I give this seminar to corporate people nowadays. Tell them this, you have to understand this. So I used to have 2 meetings. I used to have a meeting. First is a brainstorm. So I tell the Indian, you can keep talking, do everything like that. Whatever you want to do is fine. And then I say, okay, now, then I would get one of the white guys and say, now, you guys stop. You go on the board and you write down number 1, 2, 3, 4, we do this, we do that, we don't do this, this guy does that. So you make it orderly, systematic, linear thinking. Yeah? And this guy is much better than the Indian at doing that. He's very organized and systematic at doing that. So you get the best of both. Now, actually, there is a huge weakness in Dharma in this regard, and you picked a very important point. We have to be conscious of it and do something about it collectively. The weakness is that Dharma assumes people of a certain character to be self-compliant. Like if you have a library with an honor system, nobody is policing, no security guard looking at what you're taking out. It's an honor system based on your own character, that before you leave the book, you sign out your name. Yeah? Or you have a joint family with a common money sitting there, and everybody take out the money and list it. Something like that. Or you have a temple where nobody is policing, because you're supposed to behave for yourself. Now, if you have a system of that kind, it's meant for people who are evolved up to a certain level. And for people who are evolved up to a certain level, a self-policing, self-discipline is better than cops policing over you heavy-handed. Yeah? But what if the average level of thinking is not so evolved? It has become degenerate like it has. Then leaving people alone to do the right thing might not work, because there will be corruption, somebody is abusive, somebody is taking advantage, somebody is stealing, they are doing all those things. So you see, the Dharma civilization assumed people of a certain caliber, especially leaders. So if that caliber is gone and now you have a bunch of crooks, then that same system won't work. So our civilization has to adopt some Western ways, because they evolved these ways because their culture did not have that evolution. They did not have those advanced yogis and rishis and those kind of leaders. They had bunch of guys, pretty crude level, and so they had to develop systems to control them and police them and heavy military and all that stuff. You see? So, do you know that in the vast majority of Indian villages, there is no police station today? There is no police station. More than 50% of the villages. The first thing that they put up in a small town in USA, even with a population of 500, is a flag and a police station. Every place has a police station. When you tell this to people, they're mostly self-policed. Disputes are sorted out by some local elders, even now. So you see, self-management, self-organized, I'm explaining these concepts in chapter 4, is wonderful, provided the people have the caliber to be self-disciplined. So today our problem is we don't have either advantage. We don't have the advantage of the strong disciplines enforcing on people like the West has, and we don't have the advantage of self-character, high character, to be self-organized either. So we are neither here nor there. This is a very serious problem. And understanding that this is a problem means we can then begin to do something about it. So first we have to learn institution building. Many of our Dharma spiritual organizations are very poor at institution building. What happens, the Shankara Math are the very rare example of continuity of an institution for so many years. But most examples are when the guru who started it dies, then it's all mishmash, inner fighting. They will, like political parties, rivals split and make different parties, so the different disciples will split and start fighting each other and create many rival organizations. When a guru dies, that's what happens. There's very little institutional continuity. Institutional continuity means that you are not dependent on the charisma of any individual. It is not a personality cult. Usually, Vatican does not depend on the personal spiritual elevation of the Pope. He is a Kshatriya and a CEO. Simple as that. He is a Kshatriya and a CEO. His own state of consciousness and how high he is and what is his moral standing is not a factor in determining the corporate success of the Vatican, because it's an institution run like a corporate body. They have lawyers, they have management people, they have IT people, they have marketing people, they have all kinds of these kind of people, and they run like a corporate with strategy, business plans, budgets, all that. That's how they run. That's how churches are run. If you go to a church and try to figure out, they run in a very corporate style. But our tradition is not run like that. It's not run like that. It's run on the huge character dependence on the individual character, and how much bhakti and how much shraddha you have, and how genuine you are, and how giving you are of yourself, unattached you are up to the results, like that. All those are character qualities, and as long as that character remains, that particular movement continues from generation to generation. But when that character comes to an end and degrades and falls apart like has happened, then that movement falls apart, and we're seeing that happening in so many movements. Now that is my analysis of what the situation is. What do we do? For 20 years, I have been doing this full time. This is not a hobby, it is not a weekend job. I was 44 and I was very successful in business. I had many companies, and I had a spiritual experience of my own that convinced me that I want to give up all of that and pursue only one thing in the rest of my life. I felt I'm very lucky, and I only want to serve my Dharma, learn, study, write, teach. And so since that age of 44, and now I'm 61, so for 17, 18 years, I've done this 6-7 days a week. This is what I do. Now, I'm amazed at how rare, how difficult it is to get support from people who can easily afford it, who have the means, who even have the conviction, who even have the ideas, but for some reason they are in a rat race that is never ending. That attachment to more and more and more is without limit. So, people can be dharmic in terms of, superstitious reasons that they want the goodies, and so it's more like a transactional. I call it transactional Hinduism. I'll go and give $51 and I'll get this. I'll ask for something for my daughter's marriage, my son's career, my business, my health, my family. I want something, and for that I'm pledging I'll give this. So it's like you hire a consultant and he'll fix it for you. So the deity is like an intermediary that you're bribing. So it's a bribe system, this kind of a thing. While we have a philosophy of enlightenment and giving up attachments and going beyond all these things and being selfless and not looking for rewards, we have all that philosophy. But the practice of Hinduism for most people is basically looking for something personal that people want out of it. Or an insurance policy that nothing wrong should happen to me. I don't want anything new, but everything should continue like this, business as usual kind of thing. This is not what our tradition calls for as the reason for bhakti and the reason for faith and the reason for sadhana. So I would say a large part of the problem why the kids haven't followed is because our own people, the parents, have not practiced our dharma properly. So the kids they don't have the right role models. We want someone else to do something, not ourselves. So we are waiting that, okay, somebody else will look after my kids, I'll put them in Bal Vihar, they look after it, or I'll put them in tennis camp, or I'll put them here, or maybe they'll watch TV and play Nintendo and they'll grow up fine. So, we have been busy doing something else which is very selfish, building our own life and our own career, and the kids are left to something else. And then we are wondering, why aren't they following our footsteps? Because maybe we haven't lived the life ourselves, and we are expecting they should live the life.